Welcome back to Practically Political. It's great to have you with us again. I'm Dave Spencer.
And I'm Carrie Sheffield. Wow, let's get to it, Dave. What a week. For me, we've been hosting the show now for almost 3.5 years. And so this is our first election and first general election with the president. So it's a big milestone for us. And I think the show, we've been talking about the future of the Republican Party the whole time, kind of the dialogue. And for my women's group at Independent Women's Forum and Independent Women's Voice, this morning we hosted an event about the election results. And one question that came up was about whether this is a durable, sustainable position for Republicans, because you had, historic margins. Trump outright won Latino men. He won women. He did better, in 49 states than he did in 2020. And the District of Columbia. So this was a blowout in many respects. But the question is, do you think that the Republican Party can keep this coalition, this diverse coalition that Trump helped to forge?
Well, the short answer to that question is no, because I think there's going to be a divergence between what the Republican Party offers and what these voters are actually getting. But let's take a step back. I think there are three mistakes that led to this, and I will rank them from, they're all bad, but we'll do the least bad to the worst. Mistake number three was as far as the campaign, and that was Kamala Harris's strategy. The only chance she had to win was for her to be not the incumbent, for her to be the challenger, for her to be the fresh face, right? Because when you think about the last two vice presidents that ran, George H.W. Bush and Al Gore, they were running after presidents that had 60% low approval ratings, not low 40% approval ratings. Okay. And always the two stats that scared me the most, 65 to 70% of the country consistently thought we were on the wrong track. And this is the one that really was the death knell. 2/3 of the voters in this election, we've talked about this before, had never experienced inflation. They don't remember, as I do. Well, you're so much of a spring chicken. It was before your time too. But for those of us that are at least in our 50s, we can remember the late 70s when inflation was 18%, and then the early 80s when the prime hit 21%. These people have been raised in a world of 3% interest rates, and inflation is a gut punch. And even though most of inflation was not Biden's fault, the bottom line is perception, as we know, trumps, pardon the pun, reality. So Harris did not do that. And she had chance after chance. Of course, the most famous one or infamous one was on The View when she said she couldn't think of anything to differentiate herself. That was that was a political consultant 101. A poli-sci major in college could have answered that question better, right? So that was problem number one. She never differentiated herself and thereby blew the chance that she had to win. But let's go up the ladder. Second biggest mistake, Joe Biden running again. After the midterms, he should have said, I'm going to be a bridge to the next generation. Our party's doing very well. We're on the right track. Now it's time for me to pass the baton. And that way we could have had debates. We could have had a primary. We could have had the political process that the American people needed and deserved. I think a lot of Democrats got on Republicans because they didn't have debates, or Trump didn't participate in the debates. And at least they had debates, right? So that was problem number two. But the biggest problem, and the thing that could have solved all of this, if Mitch McConnell had the spine to get 9 more senators in January of 2021 and convict Donald Trump. And there were people that weren't running again, like Rob Portman. There were people who weren't up for re-election for 4 or 6 years. He could have got them together, said, look, let's hold hands. We'll do this together. We'll take a hit initially, but then we'll be done with them. We can start to get our party back. But he wimped out. And as is often the case with anyone who sells their soul to Donald Trump, in the end, they shoot themselves in the foot and they end up getting spat out chewed up and spat out. Mitch McConnell, not once, but twice, Donald Trump cost him control of the Senate. So that was the thanks he got for that. But if Mitch McConnell had had the spine to do what he should have done, we could have avoided all this. Nikki Haley would probably be the president-elect. Everybody would feel much more better. And even people like you who are Trump supporters, you said you would have preferred Nikki Haley. And I think I know a lot of people. Isn't that true? If you had a choice between Donald Trump and Nikki Haley, would you have chosen Nikki Haley?
Yeah, I would have.
Okay.
I would have.
Well, that's okay.
What was interesting was Nikki Haley said that she said whichever party chooses the younger generation will win. That didn't happen. She basically she was saying that Kamala Harris was going to win, and that didn't happen. So
no, I understand, but the point is, if those were the three main mistakes, we could have avoided all this. But having said that, the bottom line is that because she couldn't connect, because she was thought of as the incumbent, she got blamed. Also, I think. She was given her circumstances. She did the best that she could. She was thrust into an untenable situation. She exceeded expectations, but the bottom line is it was a very tough hill to climb because there are so many headwinds. Basically, if the minute that she couldn't be the fresh face, the minute she was only going to be the incumbent, she was doomed. So that's my takeaway. But that does not detract from the fact that there was a huge Trump improved his status with almost every group. States that were blowouts before, like New Jersey, are close states. But I do believe that this is not a sustainable coalition because I think a lot of these people are it's dissatisfaction and feeling discarded with the Democrats more than what the Republicans are offering. But we'll see. And I think that, again, cults don't outlive the demise of their leaders. So it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward in 2028, because I do believe that as little as I think of Trump in terms of his abilities as a leader and politician, I don't think this is going to be the last election we have. And I do think that there'll be another candidate who will stand in 2028. But anyway, that's a very long-winded response. What say you?
Well, I think for me, I don't see the outcome as a problem in the sense that I'm happy that Trump won over Harris. You know, that's the thing, the line that Biden would say often in 2020, don't compare me to God Almighty, compare me to the alternative. And so for me, the Kamala Harris alternative was an easy choice to vote for Donald Trump, because at the end of the day, you're voting for 5,000 people who will be appointees. You're not just voting for one man, you're voting for a worldview. That's what Biden even said in his Oval Office remarks this week. He said, you're voting for a vision. And so when you're looking at the gains that Trump got, for example, among Black men, he eroded the victory that Hillary Clinton won Black men by 69 points. Biden won them by 60 points. Harris won them only by 56 points. So that's a major erosion of 14 points over since Trump's been on the scene. And then Latino men, there was an even more significant swing, starting with Hillary Clinton. Clinton for Latino men beat Trump, but he beat her, but still she won with Latino men by 31 points. Biden won Latino men by 23 points. And then this year, Trump flipped it and he beat Harris by 12 points. And I think it had to do with common sense, because Harris, her party was seen as they want to allow men in women's sports, men in women's prisons. They want to put my physical safety in jeopardy. I'm not okay with that. We did a lot of efforting on that in swing states for independent women.
Your physical state in jeopardy. Crime soared under Trump and it's plunged under Biden. So how is your physical state in jeopardy?
I'm talking about women's prisons and sports and the gender ideology that Kamala Harris.
Do you know how many people in total had operations, total in the entire country during Trump and Biden administration by this so-called, trans in prison rule or whatever this was in effect during the Trump administration. 2 people. Okay, this was, again, it was a great visceral issue, but in reality, it's like, how many athletes do you really know that are competing in women's sports? Maybe 2.
No, we don't.
So
We
the
actually
point
know.
but the point is, it's such a small number,
It's
and
not small.
Trump doesn't
Dave, it's not the
he
sports.
doesn't have any policies.
Dave,
It's
I'm
what he
sorry,
believes
but
today.
Dave, you're interrupting me. I didn't interrupt you. You spoke for about 4 minutes without me saying a word. So either you can be.
Go ahead.
Okay. Because to me, it was a big issue. And for women, it was a big issue because it's not just sports. You're talking about women who have faced sexual assault, who are being put in a battered women's shelter with the biological men. And we actually did a documentary series of women in California prisons and also the administrators who are being subjected to this. You're having sexual assault in prisons. I'm not okay with that. And it's, I don't think it's okay to minimize it and say it only happens to a few people, because that's the canary in the coal mine. Because it's a few people. Okay, you're willing to sacrifice that, and then it's going to grow. It started in California. It's going to go national because of, anyway. It's not going to, at least under Trump. And anyway, I'm just saying that was one issue that our friend Kelly Goff, who was on our show a few weeks ago, she highlighted men in women's sports in one of her columns for Daily Beast. That's her. She's a Black Democrat. I'm not. She's saying that. She's saying that's part of why Black men supported Donald Trump, was that issue. She highlighted it.
Okay.
Overall, though, the biggest issue by far was the economy. And that is where Kamala Harris, I agree, she did not take responsibility for the contribution that the two major bills she voted for that expanded government spending. And that spending created a lot of basically false, one-time kind of jolts to the economy that created inflation. She took no responsibility for that. She took no responsibility for the energy policies, because energy was a big driver of the cost in inflation. And their policies have been, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say there was more drilling and permitting under Biden, but the thing is, it could have been a lot more. And there are other regulatory policies that were significant drivers. And Competitive Enterprise Institute has done analysis.
There's also the war in Ukraine, which hurt supplies. That invasion, which Donald Trump called brilliant, by the way.
Oh, that invasion that Putin enacted because he saw the weakness of Joe Biden in Afghanistan.
Because he didn't have to do anything, because Trump was giving him everything he wanted.
Putin saw.
Anyway, we've gotten into Putin before, but I'm just saying.
Anyway, I would say the Ukrainian invasion was a direct result of failed energy policy, because you had, for example, the pipeline over in Europe, the Nord Stream 2, which Trump saw how beneficial it would be to stand up against Putin. Trump would say to Angela Merkel in Germany, "You're too reliant on Russian energy." He would say that to her. Biden didn't care. Biden was the one who didn't want the Nord Stream 2 because it was environmentally whatever. But in the end, it enriches Putin to have more supplies coming from there. So Biden, as far as I'm concerned, was a big driver of why Putin invaded Ukraine. And so again, that's his fault.
We disagree on that one, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, the other factor that we spoke a little bit in our last show with Mandy about, that I was concerned about, was the early voting. And this is where Republicans, they finally woke up. And so I've got some stats here from CNN.
Well, that's good. And remember, Donald Trump was the one who crapped on early voting. That's the main reason that they lost those 2 Senate seats in Georgia, was because of he crapped on early voting. So he's finally gotten around to embracing it. Good for him, and good for the party. There was some cannibalizing, but look, I'm someone who believes you should vote as many times as many people should vote as possible, and as many times, many things you can do to increase those options, because there's no case of voter fraud that would have affected any election. So that was my problem with a lot of these so-called voter suppression laws, is that they made it harder to vote. I think we should make it easier to vote. So I am happy that people took advantage of early voting, and I hope they will do that more. And I hope that more states will go to mail-in voting, because if you look at Oregon and Colorado, the 2 states with the highest percentage of mail-in voting, they have some of the lowest fraud in the in the country. And I think that that's but I wanted to ask you, so many people that voted for Trump, and again, they held their nose and did it. And a lot of their reason was, oh, well, we survived one Trump administration, we can survive another. He had 4 years to indict Hillary or arrest Hillary, and he didn't do anything, and he could have done all this stuff, and he wouldn't. But first of all, everyone agrees that a lot of the guardrails that were there the first term are not going to be there this term, whether that's the incentive to run for reelection and also having people like John Kelly or Mattis or Tillerson around. You're going to have a bunch of enablers around now. So are you concerned at all that a lot of this stuff that people have said that now Trump, because there are no guardrails in terms of threats to democracy, in terms of dismantling the pillars of our system, our institution, are you worried at all about that, or do you think that don't worry, it'll all be fine? How do you feel on that, Carrie?
Well, it's not just me, but the American people trust Donald Trump more than the left on democracy. That was according to Washington
the bottom
Post.
line is that's such a BS red herring stat, because the other side didn't incite an insurrection. The other side didn't try to block the plans for peaceful transfer of power, because you have to admit that if the shoe were on the other's foot, Donald Trump would not have conceded this election. They were already laying the groundwork with the lawsuits to challenge it. So at least I'm glad that there was no issue of voter fraud, of course, because Republicans won, so there wouldn't be. But at least no one said the vote was rigged. No one said there were problems voting. This time, unlike 2021, we will have a peaceful transfer of power without insurrections, without fake electors, without all this stuff. So, but all I'm saying is that Donald Trump has told us what he's going to do. So don't be surprised if he incites the Insurrection Act and uses military against his own people. He wanted to do it, but Milley wouldn't let him before. Don't be surprised if he evokes Schedule F and replaces 50,000 people. All right. A president is allowed to replace 4,000 people typically. Imagine 50,000 civil servants replaced with Trump loyalists and acolytes and basically, people that are going to pad the numbers. We can easily be like Hungary. Don't be surprised if he pardons the hostages who bashed in the heads of 140 police officers on January 6th. So he's told us what he's going to do. So you're not worried about any of that stuff.
Dave, I don't see any evidence of what you're saying. I mean, Schedule F is constitutional. The fact, again, we've talked about this, and even with Mandy, like the fact that a president has the right to reform its executive branch, and also the fact that Congress has been asleep at the wheel and allowed their power to be usurped by the executive branch.
Well, that we
anti-fascist, like that is.
I have agreed with that. But my point is, so you have no concerns about any of this stuff. You think Trump 2.0 is going to be just like Trump 1.0 in terms of the guardrails, in terms of you're not worried about any of this stuff that I mentioned.
So what's interesting to me is like, because you are an open-minded person. You travel the country. You speak to Trump supporters.
I'm listening to what he said.
But the thing is, he doesn't. He himself, I think he lashes out when he feels attacked. And the thing is, 62% of Americans, according to Quinnipiac, said that the Biden DOJ case against Trump was politically motivated. Well, so to me, that is actually a threat to democracy. The fact that Joe Biden was trying to throw his opponent in prison.
But we're not
democracy, Dave.
Talking about that right now. And first of all, by the way,
no, can I speak? You keep interrupting me, Dave. I love you, but like,
no, but I thought you were done. Go ahead.
I just sense, I understand that a lot of Harris supporters are upset, but I feel like part of why Harris lost is because of fear mongering and saying all these things that you're saying. like the fact, and Bill even said this with, like, how little faith do you have in our justice system? How little faith do you have in our Congress? How little faith do you have in our Defense Department? Like, you think that everything is going to completely collapse? Like Oprah's comment the night before the election. She's like, if you don't vote, you'll never be able to vote again. Like, that to me is so, like, that is like gaslighting people.
I agree. And
I just think that
on this show here, let me respond. On this show, I've even said, people say, "Oh, our lives depend upon it." BS. You're going to go back to your $20 million house, Mrs. Hollywood celebrity, whoever wins, and you're going to be the same. But the point is, there are two things we need to consider. First of all, he tried this before. He told Jeff Sessions to arrest Hillary Clinton. And he said, "Mr. President, we have no evidence." He told Bill Barr 2 weeks before the 2020 election to arrest Joe Biden. And Barr says, we have no reason to do that. He told Mark Milley to use American troops on his own citizens. So this is stuff that he's tried before, but the guardrails that were there last time are not going to be there this time. He hasn't changed. Plus, he feels more emboldened. So I think it's a little naive for a lot of Trump supporters like you to feel and say, "Oh, don't worry about it. The institutions will hold." Plus, on top of that, you throw the immunity case of the Supreme Court, which is going to make him feel more emboldened. So I think it's very naive for anyone to think that he's not going to try to push the boundaries of our institutions. And that is something that all Americans need to be worried about it. And again, don't listen to me, listen to Donald Trump. This is what he said he has done. I am a very open-minded person. I have given him credit where it's due. I have criticized the other side where I think it's appropriate. But this is something that all Americans need to be concerned about because he has said it. And you can give me all these stats about what the American people think, and the polls say that Biden was actually worse. But no, it's like saying, well, Hillary Clinton never acknowledged that she disputed the 2020 election. She conceded the night of the election. Okay? Donald Trump still hasn't conceded his 2020 loss. I mean, it's again, masters of the false equivalency.
Dave, here's the hard truth that I think a lot of Democrats don't want to understand. They are the reason Trump won. Trump was losing in the primary. He was losing. I saw what was happening with Ron DeSantis. He was rising. Ron DeSantis was starting to beat Donald Trump during the primary. And then what happens? The indictments happen. And like I said, 2/3 of Americans say those indictments were politically motivated. You literally had them changing the law in the state of New York to prosecute Trump. That's not blind justice. Like, former Governor Cuomo told Bill Maher, this never would have happened if the Alan Bragg stuff, like where he magically converted something into a felony, 34 felonies. Like, he's like, this never would have happened if it wasn't Trump. And then the fact that the feds raided, how would you feel if the feds raided your house while you're out of town, rifling through your wife's underwear? That's not okay. And the fact that Joe Biden, the way they treated Joe Biden compared to the way they treated Trump, night and day. And so when you're talking about the destruction of norms and the destruction of
why did they treat?
You're talking about guardrails, Steve.
Let me ask you a question. Why did they treat?
And then you had like Fani Willis, like, in her like extreme corruption, like she's a joke, leading the prosecution, and then trying to make money and win electoral office off of getting Trump. This is a destruction of the norms, Dave. So that's what I'm saying. Like, the left is the reason Trump won the primary, because people saw this as a miscarriage of justice. So I'm just saying, if you don't like that outcome to the Democrats, then lay down your weapons and stop weaponizing justice. That's the problem. And so does Trump overreact sometimes? Yeah, he does. But like, the entire time he was president, they manufactured a bunch of nonsense about like Russia collusion.
Russia was not. There was plenty. We've been through this
No.
before. Plenty of evidence that Russia
But
was.
that's what the media did. The media diverted him from his agenda with this nonsense.
Let me respond to what you said.
That is going to be the difference when
let
he's
me let me respond to what you
allow
said.
the left to divert him the way they did in the first
Let
administration.
me respond to what you said. First of all, I have been very critical of the way the Democrats handled it. My point is, this is an attention challenged nation. We said this before. It was silly to basically use our attention, or use the shit we had, whatever term you want to say, on a case that was basically a sex scandal that no one cares about. It was like Bill Clinton. People don't care about sex scandals, okay? And yes, both Letitia James and Alvin Bragg had campaigned upon it. But when you go to Mar-a-Lago, and this is again another quintessential false equivalency. Well, Joe Biden was treated so differently, and so was Mike Pence. Yeah, the reason that Donald Trump got into trouble was not that he took the documents. People sometimes take documents. Mike Pence took them. Joe Biden took them. The difference is they cooperated. They gave them back. Donald Trump first denied that he had them, then said that he had given them back. So yeah, they had every right to raid his house because they weren't going to get him back. Okay, and the same thing. Yeah, Fani Willis, she was sticking some guy she was working with. That's poor taste, and it reduced her credibility, but it didn't reduce the credibility of the case. He's on tape on that phone call. This is all there. So the cases were good, but Merrick Garland, okay, gets my vote as the worst member of the Biden administration, because he had 4 years to bring these cases. He did nothing. He just sat on it, and then brought the least consequential case up first, and then allowed other judges to delay, on and on. So the administration made their own bet on that one. And Merrick Garland, he kind of reminds me a little of Bob Mueller. He's one of those guys, when you need to give an impassioned reason, he'll just read some dry statement. But the bottom line is, there was no question in terms of January 6th about what Trump did. But the bottom line is, people didn't care about it in the end. And I think the Democratic Party has to ask themselves, okay, despite all this stuff, why did the election turn out the way it did? And again, it goes back to what we said way back when, and that's why Biden was doomed after the debate. This election was going to be won by whatever candidate on whom it was not a referendum. And as soon as Biden had the debate debacle, it could not be anything but a referendum on him. As soon as Kamala wouldn't differentiate herself from Biden, it couldn't be anything but a referendum on her. I still thought, because Trump had a bad week at the end, or bad 2 weeks, I still thought she was going to pull out the blue wall states. So I was wrong on that one. I thought it was either going to be 270 or 276. I thought Nevada was the one state that I couldn't call. But it didn't work out that way, and the die has been set. I think people are accepting it. So we will see what happens. But I'm not trying to say the Democrats don't deserve a lot of blame for their own defeat. The writing was on the wall. They didn't read it. And again, Joe Biden, you need to take a long look in the mirror and ask yourself, if you were telling the country for months, this is the most important election ever, democracy's at stake, we can't let this man get back in, and you're so hubristic and selfish that you won't read the writing on the wall, and then the media and your own administration covers up your declining physical state. And by the way, Trump's state is declining too. You look at him now compared to 8 years ago or even 4 years ago, he's more addled and more confused than ever. And that's where the right always complains about the media not covering fairly, but he's had so many slip-ups, so many forgotten where he is, forgotten whom he's talking about, all the stuff. But the media's let it slip because, he's so crazy. Who knows? But he's definitely a declining 78-year-old. But we have what we have. He was elected. I'm hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst. It's like a good investment strategy.
Oh, you're a rational optimist. Good. Yeah, I think it's important to note that the Democrats spent between July 22nd and Election Day for the presidency. Democrats spent 1.37 billion, so almost 1.4 billion on political ads for Kamala Harris, and Republicans only spent 914 million. So you
Well,
have
guys, come on.
almost like a 50% increase in the spending for the Democrats. So to me, that shows you can't buy love. And I think the idea that Biden, you know, he should have. I agree, and I know you were saying this years ago that Biden should not run.
No, I spent part of a show giving him an implored plea to please not run.
No, you were right, but I also think that Harris and the entire Biden White House and the media, I mean, you touched on it, they bear culpability for they dug their own grave because they kept denying what conservatives were saying.
And she wouldn't even come clean when they asked her about, well, when did you realize that Biden's capabilities were fading?
Yeah, no, and I saw it in
we're different people or whatever. So I look again, Carrie. I love you, but sometimes I can't even get you to even criticize anything about Trump. But in this case, I'm being very honest about it. And there are certainly a lot of things that the Democrats should have done better. And most importantly, had a true primary and gotten the best possible candidate. Because I think there are a lot of candidates that could have done better. I think Harris, once again, given that she was tossed into a very hard situation, I think she exceeded expectations. I think she cleaned his clock in the debate. I think she had a good convention speech. But in the end, she didn't differentiate herself, and that was her only chance. And once that happened, then it was over. She was the incumbent, and it was a done deal, and nothing else. But I think this election also shows that a lot of the old-fashioned rules about politics, like a good ground game really means a lot, and spending money on ads, all this stuff. Yeah, it can help around the edges. And same thing, Josh Shapiro. Maybe she wins Pennsylvania, maybe she doesn't, but it was a bad choice. Tim Walz didn't add anything, but in this case, I think, again, the only thing that could have saved her was if she had not been the incumbent, and that became very evident, unfortunately, that was not going to be the case. So, well, I think we will have to leave it there. But once again, another incredibly healthy debate, and obviously, for those on both sides, I wish our now 47th president well, and I hope that he will respect the constitutional boundaries. And I would love nothing more than a year from now for us to be sitting around and you saying, "Oh, Dave, you overreacted. It hasn't been that bad. See, yeah, he's talked. His bark was worse than his bite. And please, 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 let me be wrong." Sadly, I don't think I'm going to be, and we haven't even gotten into the tariffs and all this destructive stuff. And the reason the bond markets, even though stock market is going up, the bond market's going up too, because interest rates are going to be higher because inflation is going to be higher. But anyway, we'll have to see. It's the voters have made a decision, and I respect that decision, and I wish him well, and I hope for the best, but I'm preparing for the worst. I'll give you the final word.
Well, I heard a great phrase, which is whether you belong to the left wing or the right wing, we're part of the same bird, the American eagle. And at the end of the day, we are human beings first. There's more about us in common than the political differences. So I'm hoping that any Democrat who's disappointed or anybody who voted for Harris, that they'll be able to, on both sides, like we'll be able to humanize each other and move forward as a country and lower the temperature in terms of polarization. And I'm hoping for the best too. I'm hoping for good policy. I'm excited to see what's going to happen. And your lips to God's ears next year. We'll find out, Dave.
We will keep our fingers crossed. So in any case, on that note, Thanks again for joining us, folks. It's always great to have you on Practically Political. Until next time, I'm Dave Spencer.
I'm Carrie Sheffield. See you guys soon.